Good morning, everyone. My name is Rohan, and my topic is factors affecting dividend decision. First, let us know about what is dividend decision. Meaning of dividend decision. Dividend decision is the decision about how much of the profit is to be distributed to the shareholders and how much of it is to be retained in business. So here, dividend is that portion of profit which is distributed to the shareholders. So this dividend decision is involved that how much of profit owned by the company is to be distributed to the shareholders and how much of profit should be retained in the business as a reinvestment. Factors affecting dividend decision. These are some of the factors which affect dividend decision. They are earnings, stability of dividends, growth prospects, cash flow positions, preference of shareholders, taxation policy, stock market reaction, access to capital market. Let's see it one by one. The first one is earnings. Company having a stable earnings could declare high rate of dividends. Dividends are paid out of current and past earnings. That means the company which have more earnings will definitely give more dividend to its shareholders. The company which have less earnings may give less dividends to its shareholders. Dividends are paid out of current and past earnings. This implies that earnings play a key role in the dividend decision. A company having higher earnings will be in a position to pay higher amount of dividend to its shareholders. A company having low or limited earnings would distribute low dividends. The next one is stability of dividends. Companies generally follow the policy of stable dividend. The dividend per share is not charged in case earnings changes by small proportion or increase in earnings is temporary in nature. That means companies practices of stabilizing their dividends. Companies always try to stabilize their dividends. They try to avoid frequent fluctuations in dividend per share and opt for increasing or decreasing the value only when there is consistent rise or fall in the earning of the company. So here company always try to stabilize their dividends. They don't want to frequent fluctuations in the dividend. The next one is growth prospect. In case there are growth prospects for the company in the near future, then it will retain its earnings and thus no or less dividend will be declared. That means companies always aim for a higher growth level or expansion of operations, retain a higher portion of the earnings with itself for reinvestment. Thus, dividend of such a company is smaller as compared to the companies with lower growth opportunities. That means if the company wants to grow, they must need more investments. So they always try to give less dividends to the shareholders and maximizing maximizing reinvestment by giving less dividends to its shareholders. And the next one is cash flow positions. Dividend involves an outflow of cash and thus availability of adequate cash is foremost requirement for declaration of dividend. So here dividend payment requires cash outflow. If a company is low on cash, then the dividend will be lower as compared to the company which has more liquidity. Even if a company has a higher profit, it will not be able to distribute high dividend if it does not have enough cash. So here it is clear that a company must need cash to give dividends. So if the company does not have enough cash, it cannot give more dividend to its shareholders. So cash flow position is very important in a company. The company must have the more cash flows in it to give more dividend to its shareholders. The next one is preference of shareholders. While deciding about dividend, the preference of shareholders also taken into account. In case shareholders desire for dividend, then company may go for declaring the same. That means a company must keep in mind the preference of the shareholders while distributing the dividend. For instance, if the shareholders prefer at least a certain amount of dividend, the company is likely to declare the same. So, the shareholders are the investors of the company, and the company must um, keep in mind the preference of them, because if the shareholders wants more dividend, the company has to give the more dividends which is available in the company, and they need to spend less amount in reinvestment. So in dividend decision they must keep in mind about the preference of shareholders. If the shareholders ask for least a certain amount of dividends, then the company is likely to declare the same. The next one is taxation policy. A company is required to pay tax on dividend declared by it. If tax on dividend is higher, company will prefer to pay less by way of dividend, whereas if tax rates are lower, then more dividend are declared by the company. So taxation policy plays an important role in deciding the dividends. If the taxation policy is such that a high rate of tax is levied on dividends distribution, then the companies are likely to distribute lower dividend. On the other hand, it might prefer to distribute higher dividends if the tax rate is low. So here it's clear that taxation policy plays a very important role in deciding dividends. If the tax rate on dividend distribution is more, the company will definitely give less dividend to the shareholders, and if the tax on dividend distribution is less, the company will likely to give more dividend to its shareholders. The next one is stock market reaction. The amount of dividend that a company distributes affects its stock market price. An increase in dividend by a company is viewed as a good sign by the investors, and the stock price of the company goes up. On the other hand, a fall in the dividends affects the stock price. Thus, while taking the dividend decision, company must consider the probable stock market reaction. So here the amount of dividend that a company distributes affects its stock market price. If the company if the company is giving more dividend to its shareholders, then the value of their share will definitely increase, and and it will show a good impression on investors, and the stock price of the companies goes up. In the same way, if the company is giving less dividends to the shareholders, it will affect its stock price. Thus, while taking the dividend decision, a company must consider the probable stock market reactions. The next one is access to capital market. The companies that have a greater access to the capital market tend to pay higher dividends. This is because they can rely less in retained earnings and more on the other sources due to market access. The smaller companies who have lower access to the capital market tend to pay lower dividends. So it's clear that if the company have more access to the capital market, it will pay higher dividends because it does not need to pay for other sources. And smaller companies which do not have more access to the capital market will definitely give less dividend to its shareholders, as they have to give more, and they have to give more access to other sources. So these are the these are some of the factors which affects dividend decisions. Let's just see it again. That was earnings, stability of dividends, growth prospects, cash flow positions, preference of shareholders, taxation policy, stock market reaction, access to capital market. Thank you.